Why give Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss bulletin board material as an 18-point underdog? It makes no sense.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steven Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is Zach Mareth from the Rebel Walk. Joining, we're going to talk a little bit about Kentucky. And Zach, Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio kind of stepped in it today. He mentioned that these things about a game at Ole Miss. Vaught-Hemingway Stadium is small and not very loud. It is not a difficult place to play. It is a late arriving crowd, and it's just interesting. Why would you do that as an 18-point underdog? Why would you even put that in the ether to where all the students and everybody are going to be so fired up? There's going to be 68,000 people in that stadium when it was 64,000 and a little bit more than 38 in 2022. So it's going to be 4,000 more people than they're used to. I don't think he knows exactly what this environment's going to look like.
No, and not at all, Steven. And the thing is, he clearly hasn't done his research, considering Ole Miss broke the attendance record against Georgia Southern. Now you have an SEC opponent coming to town. I don't care when the kickoff is. It's very clear that Ole Miss fans are invested in this team, and they're going to show up whether the kickoff is at 8 a.m., 11 a.m., midnight. It doesn't matter. Ole Miss fans are going to show up. And credit to him. He's going to fire us up even more. I'll be in the student section for sure, chirping the Kentucky players. I'm looking forward to it, especially after that. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be rowdy. Even if it's an 11 a.m. The last game against Kentucky was extremely rowdy at 11 a.m. So weird comment. And like you said, considering they're supposed to lose by 18 or whatever the spread is, it's probably not the smartest thing to put out there.
Yeah, it's just very interesting. I realize that Matt Jones, and that's not the Ole Miss Matt Jones, it's the Kentucky Sports Radio Matt Jones. I realize that he's trying to instill hope in his fan base. They're 0-2 to start the SEC slate with 2 home losses. That's not a good place to be at. They have a really good defensive team, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But one thing is really interesting. This team could be 0-3, staring at 0-4, and this season completely could get away from them. So I can understand a little bit why they did it.
No, absolutely. And again, it's bringing a little more excitement to this game than I think there really should be. Because I know, not that we're looking past Kentucky, but I expect our team to go in there on Saturday and handle business. But now, you see this tweet, and now the fans are a little more engaged. Kentucky's a little more excited about it, thinking maybe they have a chance because of that tweet. And again, I know Ole Miss fans, I've seen it all over Twitter. They're fired up and ready to go for that 11 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah, and you saw the tweets coming out of the Manning Center. This game is hitting a little bit different to the players inside that building.
Without a doubt, Steven. You can tell, talking to the players this week, and Lane said it, he wasn't being disrespectful, but, he quite literally said that he's hoping that fall camp practice has prepared them enough for SEC play, because these first 4 games simply haven't. In terms of size, strength, and just overall, player to player, man to man, the SEC is a whole different animal than Wake Forest and Georgia Southern. And again, that's no disrespect. It's just the truth. So we'll see. I think Ole Miss goes out there and really takes care of what they need to. But again, it's very different. And that's what's exciting. You can tell the players they're excited to get in SEC play because they've had 4 practice games. They've been waiting on this since they transferred or since they came back for their final year, which is, it's going to be good.
Derek Vandegrift joining the show as well. Derek, we talked about at the start of the show, Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio calling Vaught-Hemingway small, not very loud, not a difficult place to play. It's a late arriving crowd. It's more of a party place than an actual football environment. It's just not that difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
I think all he needs to do is look at the last time Kentucky came and played at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Ask Will Levis just how tough it was to play that day in Mississippi. Look, this is a new era in Ole Miss football, right? These fans are jacked up. We're setting attendance records game after game after game for all of these non-con schools that we've been playing. Everybody's excited. They're getting there. They're loud. And they're going to raise a lot of hell come 11 o'clock on Saturday morning in Oxford, Mississippi. And I think he's going to be probably a little shocked by the environment by the time he leaves that place if he's making the trip down.
Yeah, I think he might be a little bit shocked, but because the Ole Miss that he saw in 2022 is not the Ole Miss that it is right now. And I'm not even talking about the players on the field or the team currently. I'm talking about the overall environment of what you're walking into. Yeah. Keith Carter and the stadium crew, they've done a fantastic job of making the game day environment something worth going to, whether it be drone shows or flyovers or fireworks, all of that stuff. They do a good job of utilizing their LED lights and all of that. They have made a nice game day atmosphere when 5 years ago, it was a timeout happens and let's turn our attention to the 15-yard line for 4 minutes to wave at some former player that is back getting a plaque. And that was basically the game day other than the game. Now it's different. There's DJs, they're flying around, there's lights, there's lots of stuff to look at. Now, it might be $12 to get a beer in that stadium. That's a whole nother conversation, but they're doing a decent job of the game day of entertaining.
Yeah. And I think more than anything, nobody's happier about what he said than Lane Kiffin. If you need to give him any more fuel to kind of rile up the crowd and get them there and not only get there, stay there, be loud the entire time. I bet he was fired up to see what Matt Jones had to say about this Ole Miss crowd. And look, the Ole Miss fans are going to show up, and they are going to be really, really loud on Saturday. And Kentucky's going to have a tough time, right? I'm excited about this game because, look, we've played good coaches so far this year, right? Derek Mason is a good coach. I don't think anybody will dispute that. Dave Clawson's a good coach. He's done a great job at Wake Forest. We know what Clay Helton's done throughout his career as well. Clay Helton did a really good job even last week putting his players in a position to succeed when they were outmatched at every single spot on the field, every single time they stepped between those white lines. Now Ole Miss is going to go up against another really good coach. Mark Stoops is the longest tenured coach in the SEC. He's done a great job at Kentucky. Always seems to step up in these really big games against the high-ranked opponents, right? Just look what he did to Georgia a couple of weeks ago, and that's a common theme with Kentucky and Georgia. He always plays Georgia really well. He finds a way to get his team up, gets them ready to play, and now he's got better athletes than obviously your Georgia Southern, Wake Forest, and teams like that. So I'm really interested to see how this team's going to respond. I think I know how they're going to respond. I know what I'm expecting from it, but it's still going to be a lot of fun to see what we do against, Barry and Brown out there, one of the best athletes in the SEC at wide receiver. We keep talking about the defensive backfield and how, if you wanted to nitpick something, that's where you would go is the back end of this defense. Well, they've got a real challenge. See how they step up. The offensive and defensive lines, it's going to be a battle on each line of scrimmage against some really good SEC quality players. That's what I'm excited to watch. And the fans are going to play a part in this too. Real young quarterback with Vandegrift, spells his name really weird. Can't trust a guy that spells it with an A instead of a Y. But, he's going to find out just how difficult it is to play in Oxford.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, we'll talk about Mark Stoops' penchant for mucking up games against extremely talented teams and how he did it against the Georgia Bulldogs and what Ole Miss might need to do in their game. So stick around for that. Hey, Ole Miss fans, I don't know about you, but when I have a long to-do list staring me down, I reach for a 5-hour energy shot. Whether it's tackling work tasks or DIY projects around the house, 5-hour energy fixes tired fast and helps me power through the day. If you're like me, you've got a million things to get done, and when you grab your supplies for the day, I make sure to grab that 5-hour energy shot to stay on top of it all. Personally, I also use 5-hour energy before my workouts. These are days when hitting the gym feels like a chore, but after taking the shot, I feel a little bit more motivated and ready to get through my workout. If you're struggling to stay consistent or just need a little extra push, 5 Hour Energy can be a game changer. If you're staying up late to catch all the action from your favorite games, 5 Hour Energy shots can keep you alert so you don't miss a single play. Then take another shot in the morning to start your day fresh and stay focused. What makes 5 Hour Energy even better? It's zero sugar and comes in convenient portable sizes, making it perfect pick-me-ups to keep you going. Plus, the website has a tons of flavors like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it shipped right to your door. So why wait? Head to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com and use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's all one word to get 20% off your order. But hurry, this offer is only valid until September 30th, which is really just this weekend, and can't be combined with other promotions. Get your 5 Hour Energy shot today and feel the boost you need to tackle your day. All right, guys. Before we get into the comments and third segments, we're going to look at the user comments that people are asking questions. But Mark Stoops, listen, he's a really good football coach. A&M wanted him to be their coach for a reason, Zach. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that games against Georgia, games against teams that he's supposed to struggle against and maybe has a talent deficiency against, he is really good at mucking up those games. He is really good at making your quarterback look average. He is really good at stopping the run. Defensively, this is the second best defense that Ole Miss football is going to see this year.
Without a doubt. And, you know, you look at Stoops, like you said, Stephen, he always seems to rise to the occasion. And we've seen it year after year with Georgia. You know, talking about that defense, there's one guy who they talked about in the press conferences. That's Deion Walker. This is weird to even say, but this man is 6'6", 345 pounds, which is, I don't know how any human is even that large, but Walker's a first-round pick. He was a preseason All-American, first-team guy all over the board. You know, he's going to be really disruptive against an offensive line who still seems to be finding their footing at some point. So that we're going to see, you know, can Reese McIntyre hold his own? Can Kalepo and Beulah hold their own up the middle and give Dart enough time to really try and expose the secondary? But there's no doubt that Mark Stoops is going to bring an incredible game plan. So I'm excited to see how this Ole Miss offense can handle that adversity. You know, we've seen stretches during different games where things kind of don't flow. Things don't look as efficient as certain drives as they should. So kind of how can Ole Miss adjust during the game, throughout the game, and really try and quiet this Deion Walker kid from making Jackson Dart's life a living hell on Saturday?
If you look at the other side of the ball, Dids, the one thing that stands out is the mismatch, if there is one in this game, is the Ole Miss defensive line against the Kentucky offensive line. Kentucky basically was not even able to throw the ball against South Carolina. South Carolina whooped their offensive line that bad. And because of that, they ended up a 31-3 victor. But Kentucky's defense in that game only gave up 215 yards. That tells you how bad the offense played. Is this a game to where Suntaran Perkins, Princely Amamiellen, those guys, is like, hey, this is why you're here?
And I think you're going to be able to say that about a lot of games on Ole Miss's schedule going forward, right? This is what's going to make this Ole Miss defense go. It's what's going to make it great. We think this is a great defense, and the reason for it is that front seven. You know, you've got Nolan and Pegues, Perkins, Umamalen, and even beyond that, Chris Paul is playing an incredible linebacker right now. He's doing such a good job because those guys up front are taking all those offensive linemen away. They're really freeing him up, letting him do what he does best, and that's run to the ball and make a play, right? But yeah, that's where really every advantage Ole Miss is going to have in every game. You think it's going to be up front on that defensive line. It needs to be up front on that defensive line. Even though that we've had, you know, Paul, Corey Coleman, those guys step up at linebacker, it's all because the guys up front are able to eat up all the offensive linemen and really free them up to run around and make plays.
Yeah, the question is, tomorrow night will be the first injury report that we'll receive. I'm so fired up about that. I have a graphic that says injury report that I've already built ready to go. But do we think that Jared Ivey is going to actually play in this game, Zach?
I really do, Steven. I think they'll list him as questionable because I don't know if that's an option, but Lane seems the type of guy to try and hide this as much as you can until Saturday. But I think, there's a reason that Lane did come out and say it was an ankle injury. It wasn't that serious. Jared's mom was on Twitter telling people to kind of take a breath, to calm down. And I think they rested him for that reason and are trying to, get him back to game speed. Do I think he'll start and take a lot of snaps? Maybe not. But I do fully expect to see Jared Ivey on the field during some portions this Saturday.
All right. Before we go to the comment section and see what's going on, we're going to do the key to this football game that nobody's actually thinking of. So my key to this game will be Juice Wells and Trey Harris, not for catching the ball, not for what they can do in the pass game. They are going to cause boxes to get a little bit lighter, and it's going to allow Henry Parrish to break out and run the ball quite well. Because I'm not sure against Kentucky and in this game that Ole Miss is going to have a ton of success running the ball when everybody knows they're going to run the ball. There's going to have to be a little bit of deception, and so it's going to be imperative for basically Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart to put the fear of God in that secondary to open up the underneath stuff and have a little bit lighter box. Diz?
Yeah, I think you make a great point there. I kind of feel the same way you do. When they know we're going to run the ball, I think we'll really struggle. Again, this is a really good defensive front we're going to see in Kentucky. You saw that in that Georgia game as well. But kind of like you, we need to open up the underneath stuff. I look for Caden Prescorn to potentially have a big game right here on Saturday, right? For every reason you just said. You get Trey Harris, Juice Wells, both of them on the outside. And right now, Jordan Watkins is making one ginormous play every single Saturday ever since he's come back the last couple of weeks, right? And it's all because of those two guys on the outside. They're pulling safeties or leaving him running free. He gets behind linebackers, and he's gone. If they see that and they try to stop that as well, and everybody kind of sags back a little bit, look for Daquan Wright, Caden Prescorn, those kind of guys underneath, maybe Caden Lee as well. Look for those, third, fourth options, receiving options to potentially have big games to open things up a little bit. And then again, no matter what you do, I don't care how Kentucky scores as long as it's not Barry and Brown. Zone in on that guy. He is an elite athlete, can take it to the house every time he touches the ball. If one guy on this Kentucky offense beats you, it better not be Barry and Brown.
What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I think going off of what Did said, Barry and Brown, last time he was in Oxford, he caught for, I think, 2 passes for 81 yards. Every time he gets the ball, it's explosive and it's electric. He also had quite a few kickoff returns that almost went to the house. So you kind of have to prevent that. Now we have Caden Davis, so every kick should be a touchback, obviously. But Barry and Brown's he's a game changer. And just going back to what you said, Steven, I think it's going to be crucial to really put that fear into the secondary, because if you don't establish the run game, it's going to be it's going to be a lot easier to narrow in on guys like Harris and Wells. And again, just like you said, Dids, Prescorn and Daquan Wright are due. The tight ends have not had a lot of action this year, especially Caden Prescorn, a guy who went berserk in the Peach Bowl. We haven't seen a whole lot from him in the passing game, so I expect him to really take on a much bigger role, especially, with the potential run game being cut short.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. When we come back, we're going to hit the viewer comments, and we'll continue talking about this football game as well. Stick around. All right, NFL fans, you can start this season off with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. It is the place to bet on which side of Ole Miss being minus 17.5 over the Kentucky Wildcats for Saturday's game, or maybe even the over-under, which is right now at 51.5 points. Remember, think about it. Ole Miss would have gone over that number in 3 of their 4 games this season, all by themselves. So when you get a hunch like that in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the latest play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Are you watching Fox News or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, all streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. As part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So, guys, we're going to put some finishing touches on this and start hitting the comments real quick. This is a game that I think the cleaner that Ole Miss plays, the bigger they win this game. I think if Ole Miss plays a game and Kentucky plays a game, Ole Miss wins this by 20 points. If Ole Miss plays sloppy and Kentucky plays its game, I think Ole Miss still wins it, but it's by 3 to 7 points. And if Ole Miss plays great and Kentucky plays bad, it's like a 52-6 type ball game. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that both teams are going to play pretty well because of what this means for Kentucky. I think Ole Miss is going to be fired up because it's a conference game, and I'm going to take the fact that Ole Miss is probably going to cover the spread, but just barely. Dids?
As far as the spread goes, that I was really shocked to see the number this high because I'm really high on this Kentucky defense. And like Zach said with Deion Walker, he's such a difference maker on the inside of that defensive line. He's able to blow up every single play if you don't block him correctly. He can get that offensive line moving, get into the middle of that line, and just kind of raise a little havoc every single time that he puts his hand in the ground. So I was surprised it was that high, but yeah, if I had to guess, I would lean towards Ole Miss minus 17.5. What's different about this Ole Miss and Kentucky game from the ones in the past that we've seen is Ole Miss has always been able to score, right? Lane Kiffin's always had a good plan going up against Mark Stoops. We've always hit the big plays, but we never had the defense to back it up. And so we made Kentucky look like a better offense than they really were every time we played them. So I think Ole Miss comes out, like I said, they're going to be fired up. First SEC game, I think they're tired of playing these non-conference games. This is going to be a real competition, a real test for them, and they get to see what all the hard work that they've put in throughout the summer camp and everything leading into the season, because now you got 8 straight SEC games. You got to lock in. It's one thing I've been really impressed with this team and Lane Kiffin. They seem to be locked in every single game, no matter who they're playing right now. Yeah, there's some sloppy moments here and there, but for the most part, they come out of the gates running as fast as they can, jump out to these big leads. And I think that you're going to see that again on Saturday. I like Ole Miss by 21.
Yeah, and it's a situation, Zach, that one thing that we know is that Ole Miss is going to get the ball first, because if Ole Miss wins the toss, they're going to receive, and if Kentucky wins the toss, they're going to defer. So Ole Miss is going to end up with the ball first.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me into my point, Steven. I'm pretty confident Ole Miss is going to go out and score on that script drive. But for me, it's how is that offense going to compete in late in the first quarter, into the second quarter, and into the third quarter, because I think you have a chance to step on the gas and do it quickly. This is a Kentucky team who you can tell is kind of on the verge of deflating here. They already have 2 SEC losses, like we said, to South Carolina and Georgia. So if you come out, step on the gas, and you go up 14-0, and then the defense gets a stop, and the sky's the limit for this game. The cover, you guys talked about the spread. I'd love to see Ole Miss cover. I don't know if they're going to. I can see this game finishing in a 31-17 type situation. But again, that offense, let's go full throttle. Let's not have any hiccups like we had against Georgia Southern or any dull moments. And, I want to see him go out there and dominate from start to finish, hopefully to show the country that Ole Miss is for real. And, we're not the number 6 team. We belong in that top 5 group.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes until the end of the show. So whenever I bring this up, I'm going to read the question and go to one of you and alternate that and get your opinion on this post. So Cal Seeley says, get ready for the broken record of we'll learn more about Ole Miss after this game, guys. Just block it out because they say it after every game we play. Just win, baby. That's all we have to do. Zach.
100%. We are going, okay. In my opinion, I'm an Ole Miss guy, obviously, like most of the viewers are. I think we beat Kentucky. I think we beat them well. And then it's going to be, okay, well, Ole Miss hasn't played on the road in the SEC, so we're going to learn more about them. And then if we beat South Carolina, oh, they haven't played a night game. Like, people will always find excuses. They're always going to make ways to downplay Ole Miss because they're simply not used to the Rebels being this good and having this elite of a roster. So that's a great point. And like you said, just keep winning game by game.
Dids. This is from November 1382. This is Ole Miss's SEC opener. After watching Georgia struggle, this is their opportunity to show that they're a serious team. And Kentucky's defense, this is a serious defense. Even in that South Carolina game that they got boat raced 31-3, they only gave up 13 first downs and 215 yards.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. This is a situation where the offense needs to be locked in because this is a for real Kentucky defense. It's always a really good defense with Mark Stoops up there in Lexington. The key here, and it's going to be as cliche as anything you ever heard, stay in front of the chains, keep the wheels moving forward, don't get bogged down, because that's what Kentucky's going to want to try to do. They want to create 0 to negative plays, right? Try to keep you behind the chains, behind the line of scrimmage. But the thing is, this is a different Ole Miss offense because we can beat you in so many ways. We don't have just the one receiver out there. We've got 5 that can beat you. We've got 2 tight ends. You've got, Matt Jones and Henry Parrish there as well. A good experienced offensive line. If we end up getting Scott back this week as well, if he ends up playing, that's another experienced player up front. Maybe this is a game for Bentley. Maybe he uses his speed to be able to get out to the edge, get around some of those big offensive linemen or Kentucky defensive linemen and get some yards out there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see.
All right, Zach, this is from Willis. No relation. Well, I don't think there's any relation, but there might be. I think the stretch plays need to happen this week. Get their defensive line running sideline to sideline, take the wind out of their sails. Do not let them rotate and by the third quarter completely take over.
That sounds like a beautiful plan to me, Steven.
Yeah, that sounds like a real plan.
Yeah, I like it, man. I agree. You just get this offense spread out, get the ball in your playmakers' hands, because I truly do believe, if Jackson finds a way to get the ball to Juice, Trey, Caden, Lee, Jordan Watkins, I think Ole Miss can really, move away and separate themselves in this game against a Kentucky secondary. That's probably the weakest part of their defense. We talked about the defensive line. It's probably going to be hard to establish the run. So moving side to side, it sounds pretty good to me.
All right, Rick Hornsby, Kiffin needs to play that sports reporter's recording before they take the field in the locker room. Actually, the fraternity houses need to play that guy's recording because the students are the people that he was going after and everything. They need to be fired up. They need to be lathered up and ready to go and turn that place into a cauldron, right, dudes?
Yeah. Keith Carter needs to have giant speakers placed at every corner of the Grove and have that playing on repeat for everybody the entire time they're tailgating. That way they put down their drinks, put their chicken strips down, eat it, whatever they want to do, and get their butts over to the stadium about 45 minutes before kickoff and really start rocking that place and letting Mr. Jones know that he really put his team in a tough spot.
Should be pretty interesting. I do want to I appreciate you guys stopping by to be on the show. We're going to get out of here real quick. Thanks for everybody watching. If we did not get to your questions, we have a pregame show that's going to be at like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock on Saturday. We have a postgame show that's about an hour after the game. And then on Sunday night, we have the reaction roundtable. So there's plenty of opportunities for you to ask questions about what's going on. But Dids, Zach Mareth, I do appreciate it. And everybody else, hotty toddy, go Rebs.
Hotty toddies.